Co-host is having an event tomorrow to raise money for the Boston fire victims. Donating half of his sales, doing a raffle with some fun prizes from our friends. Franks and Friends, Juice Food Truck, Cape Hatters Hotel, Ocean Sports, a whole bunch of people checking in. This is as
Chris, are we going to have the agenda on the screen?
Yeah. Tina Clever will pull it up here in a minute.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Yeah, we'll have it. Looks like we have everyone in.
Okay, being 7 o'clock, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Will the board secretary take the roll?
Mr. Jim Bard,
Jim Bard, present.
Mrs. Erica Berg,
Erica Berg, present.
Mr. Dwayne Burt,
Dwayne Burt here.
Dr. Nathan Goetz,
Nathan Goetz here.
Dr. Michael Lyman,
Michael Lyman here.
Mr. Fred Scott,
Fred Scott here.
Dr. Gino Torrey,
Gino Torrey here.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Charlie Suiters here.
Mr. Mark Butterball,
Mark Butterball present.
Miss Sarah Fink, Mr. Caden Yonish.
Welcome. I'd like to welcome attendees and those who are watching on YouTube Live to our board meeting. I want to provide all notice to all participants that this meeting is being recorded and or live streamed. The role of the meeting host, Mrs. Tina Clever, is controlling the virtual platform for the board. I would like to remind board members that since this is a Zoom board meeting, to make it easier on the minutes, when you make a motion or a second to a motion, please state your full name. Likewise, when we are voting on any item, please state your name and then follow that up by a yes or a no. We have, for members of the public, we have two sections of public comment. The first section of public comment in the beginning of the meeting is for any agenda item listed on the current board agenda. If an item is not listed on the board agenda, but you would still like to address the board, that is what the second public comment period is for, which is at the end of the meeting. For those who wish to make a public comment who are on Zoom, you will use the raise the hand feature. At that point, when it's your turn and your hand is raised, you will be recognized and you will be asked to unmute your mic. When your mic is unmuted, we ask the public to please state name and address for the record, and then the board does welcome your comment, and we do want to hear from you. Before we get to the Pledge of Allegiance, I just wanted to inform the public that the board had an executive session prior to this meeting. The executive session was regarding a tax matter and a legal matter. Now, would the members of the board please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? And please unmute your mics. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As we move on in the board meeting, I want to have a moment of silence for a few folks that were connected to the Shippensburg School District. Matthew Egan passed away October 13th, 2020. Matthew was the 2000 graduate of Shippensburg High School. Thelma Mae Brenneis passed away October 15th, 2020. She's a 1949 graduate of Shippensburg High School and retired district cafeteria employee. Danny Rohn died October 15th, 2020. He's the father of Vesta Yeager, a custodian for the district. Florence Carper died October 16th, 2020. She's a 1957 graduate of Shippensburg High School. Anna Noel died October 20th, 2020. She's a 1952 graduate of Shippensburg High School. Mason Taylor passed away October 21st, 2020. He's a 2012 graduate of Shippensburg High School. As we begin our deliberations this evening, let us once again be reminded of our duty to represent all of the children of this school community, regardless of age, sex, race, or creed, and regardless of need or ability. May we now have a moment of silence to reflect on our thoughts, plans, and actions on behalf of the students of the Shippensburg School District and in memory of those names that I just read. Move on to item number 2G, agenda approval. Before accepting a motion for approving this agenda, I'll ask the superintendent, Dr. Suppo, do you have any changes or additions or deletions to the agenda?
There are no changes to the agenda.
Hearing no changes from the administration, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Dwayne Burt, so moved.
Moved by Mr. Burt. Is there a second to the motion?
Fred Scott, second.
Second by Mr. Scott. Roll call.
Mr. Dwayne Burt,
Dwayne Burt, yes.
Dr. Nathan Goetz,
Nathan Goetz, yes.
Dr. Michael Lyman,
Michael Lyman, yes.
Mr. Fred Scott,
Fred Scott, yes.
Dr. Gino Torrey,
Gino Torrey, yes.
Mr. Jim Bard,
Jim Bard, yes.
Mrs. Erica Berg,
Erica Berg, yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Charlie Suiters, yes.
Mr. Mark Butterball.
Mark Butterball, yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you, Christy. We'll move on to item number 3, citizens' comments. Again, this section is regarding agenda items. These comment periods the comments should have been submitted in advance of the board meeting. Now I'll turn to the board secretary. Do you have any comments that were submitted to be read?
I do. I think I have a total of 5.
Okay,
All right, I'll get started. First one that I received is from Jill Hubbard, and it reads, Dear Dr. Seppo, I would like to share some thoughts and questions I have had after the yes vote for SAMS and SASHS to move to hybrid was overturned last Monday, October 12th. As I've shared with the board members, my freshman son is doing very well in virtual and has enjoyed his opportunity to play on the high school boys soccer team this fall. Fortunately, our players have been COVID-free, as well as our opponents. So this letter is not to share concerns that I have about my own child. As a former educator, I am concerned about students who are struggling both academically and emotionally. First of all, I have heard from a couple of board members that due to the additional demands placed on secondary teachers, they would like us to move to a 4-day face-to-face model as soon as possible and still meet the safety expectations. I feel that moving to what is essentially full-time in-person instruction is too far a leap from the full-time virtual instruction. I feel that our district should do everything possible to move our 6 to 12 students to a hybrid for the second semester. Secondly, I made the assumption that hybrid for SAMS and SASHS would mean live streaming from the classrooms and students would receive direct instruction 4 days a week with the student's location being the only difference. Therefore, the belief by some board members that hybrid would be an inferior model of instruction really surprised me. It is only inferior if we set it up to be inferior. A teacher at Big Spring School District shared their hybrid plan with me back in June. This plan included cameras in each classroom so that live streaming would be possible during hybrid instruction. Would that be a possibility for SASD? I believe the K-3 teachers in our district are being successful with hybrid without cameras in their rooms, so we may not need to have to purchase equipment for each elementary classroom. Could you find out the pros and cons to the Big Spring method of delivering hybrid instruction? Could that information then be shared with the board members and public? Are there other neighboring districts live streaming from their classroom? Are there privacy concerns that need to be part of a waiver? What would the cost be to do this? I think that live streaming would resolve several of our concerns. I have a few random thoughts to share here. Could overcrowding of classes based on sibling cohorts be looked at? I know that my son is able to attend in-person instruction on either A or B day because he has no siblings in the district. How many other students are in that position? Has that been looked at? I also feel like the staffing issues that administrators are facing will have to be dealt with no matter what. What can be done to resolve those issues? Finally, I would be happy to help in any way that I can. Could the district form a committee to visit some neighboring districts to see how their hybrid models are set up? This committee could include middle school and high school administrators, a couple of board members, a couple of parents, and of course you, Dr. Seppo. I think the more information we can obtain about what is working and isn't working for others, the more likely we are to make informed decisions as opposed to assumptions. Thank you so much for your time in reading this. I look forward to your response. Our next one comes from Stephen Rotz. SASD School Board. I want to start off again by thanking the board and administration for making the right choice during the last school board meeting. Unfortunately, a select few decided that they are unhappy with that decision and have tried pulling all sorts of antics to get you to reverse the decision. A petition was started to reverse the decisions that you all made. I am in support of people advocating for the community and their children. However, the numbers on this petition are not accurate. As of the time of writing this letter, there are 3 members who have shared the petition telling their friends and families across the country to take the survey no matter where they live. This is not a true indication of what the actual parents and students want and need. Before making any other motions to reverse the decision, as someone enjoys throwing random motions out there, could you please put together a comprehensive and transparent survey to parents and guardians? May I suggest you get feedback from the teachers, administration, custodial staff to lay out what hybrid will look like very specifically in the secondary level and what full face-to-face would look like. Encourage all community members to take this survey, and at the next board meeting, present the number of parents who were sent the survey, how many took the survey, and what the survey results were. Please be very specific on what parents should expect. The surveys the district has sent out at this point are very vague and do not give parents enough of a clear picture as to what to select. When the failing numbers get pulled up, can we disregard exploratory classes? Not that they do not matter, but there is one middle school exploratory class that the kids do horribly in with Schoology. Again, I want to thank you for your time. I hope that the very few extreme vocal who are against your decision do not bully you into putting our community at risk. Please do the survey before entertaining other random motions that will probably be tossed out tonight. The next email comes from Sarah Lasciato. Good evening, school board administration and community members. First, I would like to commend the teachers and staff at the elementary and intermediate schools. I know that this year has not been easy for any of us, but you have been doing the best job you can, given the circumstances, to make the current educational plan work. I thank you for everything that you are doing to try and keep our students' education on track, and I appreciate each and every one of you. Secondly, I must again express my disappointment in the school board's decision to prevent the middle school and high school students from returning to any in-person learning. It has been brought to my attention of the parents and the community that 49% of middle school students are failing at least one subject. In light of that number, how could you possibly say that the current virtual learning platform is successful? But there is more to being successful than just grades. There is the mental and emotional health of our students also. Unfortunately, students are failing in that area as well. I have seen this with my own eyes, and I know that I am not the only parent who has noticed. Our once happy, confident, energetic children are becoming more angry, apathetic, and depressed. Children need social interaction face-to-face. They need to be able to interact with their friends in person, not through the computer. They need to be able to build relationships with their teacher, not watch them on the screen. The longer the virtual school continues, the greater the decline in their mental health will be. The solution is simple. Move the middle school and high school to hybrid. I have seen the change that takes place in my own child and other students by simply going to school 2 days a week. The students begin to feel happier, more normal, and less depressed. Simply being back in the school building, seeing teachers and friends has such a positive effect on the children. It's so amazing. Do not rob our middle schoolers and high schoolers of the opportunity for friendships and education any longer. There is no rational basis for treating the middle school and high school students differently than the elementary and intermediate students. In fact, some medical articles discuss the ineffectiveness of school closures. An article published in Nature Medicine in June, titled Age-Dependent Effects in the Transmission and Control of COVID-19 Epidemics, found a low proportion of cases among children and a low susceptibility of infection in individuals under the age of 20. They also found out that school closures in response to the SARS-CoV-1 did not have a substantial effect on SARS cases. Our K to 3 have been in school since September, as well as 4 to 5 in school for the past 3 weeks. And to my knowledge, we have not had any confirmed positive cases of COVID-19 in the schools that are open. If this is incorrect, please provide the information so that the community is informed. We have all heard the phrase, where there is a will, there is a way. At this point in time, it seems clear that the school board, superintendent, and others are unwilling to find a way to get our children back to school. If staffing is a concern, find a way. Have aides in the classroom while the teacher holds a Zoom class with students both at home and in school. If spacing is a problem, bring in mobile classrooms. Use the rooms that are not being used for specials. Use the gym, the library, whatever space you need to use, just find a way. To the school board superintendent and those who are unwilling to find a way to get our students back to school, you are the ones who are failing. You are failing the community, you are failing the parents, but most importantly, you are failing the students and the future of our community and our country. The next one comes from a parent in the district who wishes to remain anonymous by last name. So this comes from Amanda. Good evening. I wanted to write in to voice my concerns and gratitude to the board. A motion was hastily made at the last board meeting to bring back all students with an IEP, with very little thought and consideration just to get a motion approved. As a parent with 2 children who have an IEP does not mean one is not capable of succeeding in life. It was an insult to assume that all students with an IEP cannot do the job. My son is excelling in the current setting. He is getting the services he needs, and the accommodations are being followed by the teachers. Being at home during this has allowed him to actually get up and move around more. He's receiving this support one-to-one via Zoom with teachers and the autistic support teacher. His teachers are working night and day to make this work, and a select few in the community are trying to put everyone's health in jeopardy because they dislike the decision. An IEP does not define a child or even adult, as college students still continue to succeed with these accommodations. That motion made was essentially saying everyone with an IEP is incapable to succeed on their own. This motion was voted down, but due to the history of past meetings, I would not be shocked to see it be brought up again. Please stop making random motions with no true thought and debate into it. This is the reason this is still going on. A motion was made prematurely weeks ago without consulting first with all the stakeholders, doing diligent research, and finding out what hybrid looks like. No matter what decision is made, I ask that you keep the safety of students, staff, and fellow community members in mind when making decisions. Please do not cave into the pressures of the aggressively vocal few who do not represent the community as a whole and who continue to make random motions just to secure votes in the future election. Look at the schools around the country that are open and are starting to move into all virtual. If you do a quick search at schools around the country transitioning back right now, you will see how many are and the changes that will disrupt the stability of the education our kids will receive. I commend all of you on your dedication to the community. However, please take these motions and approvals/denials very seriously as you look at all sides. If the board does flip due to these selective, very few vocal who will call in tonight and write in, please provide the children who do not return and the staff members the PPE, shields, desk, and other supplies needed to do it safely. We are looking at a large peak in cases, and this is not the time to play around with lives. Please also check with those teachers who are teaching in the elementary schools and ensure they have all the support they need. A check will with all of them, not just one or two, with a very clear motive. I know these decisions are not easy, and I respect most of you for your hard work and dedication. Even if you do not agree with my points, I do not respect hastily made decisions that insult students with special needs and are made with very little merit and thought. My son is autistic. He is not incapable. My daughter has a learning disability and needs support. She is not incapable. Thank you. And the last one tonight comes from Jordan in Southampton, Franklin County. There is a lot of talk online and in the community about middle school and high school students being allowed to return to in-person instruction only if they are failing. Is this something the administration is actually considering? This would not be fair to the kids who are struggling, but doing the best to make it work. This is also not fair to the parents who have adjusted to accommodate the virtual learning to be at home to force their kids to do their schoolwork. This rewards the kids who may or may not be trying their best. This would encourage kids to try to fail so they can return to school. My child desperately wants to return to in-person instruction. If Shippensburg Area School District adopts a policy which is being petitioned online, this is not fair to the kids who are putting forth the effort and still struggling. I believe parents should have the choice to send their kids to school or stay virtual. I personally believe the benefits of in-person instruction far outweigh the risk of the complications of COVID. Please consider reversing course and reopening our schools for all who attend. At the very least, the administration needs to send surveys home to parents identifying their wants and desires and publish the results on their webpage. The current petition online is not an accurate reflection of what parents want because people don't even reside in our district have signed. They should have no say in this situation. Majority of local schools have resumed in-person instruction. Is our district really that different? Are we incapable of figuring out how to safely allow our kids to return to school in the current environment? Thank you. That is all I have this evening.
Thank you, Christy. And I do recognize that we have one attendee on Zoom with a raised hand. So I'm going to recognize Connor Hammond. Connor, when you're set up by the Mrs. Kleber, please state your name and your address for the record, and the board welcomes your comment.
Can you guys all hear me?
We can, yes.
This is actually Connor's mom, Erin. I'm using his computer because we got the Zoom on it. So my name is Erin Hammond, and I live at 1071 Celeste Drive in Shippensburg. And I don't know if you guys got on your agenda that there was a letter that we wanted to read from the Parents' Voice for Choice. There were several community members that helped compose this letter, and we sent it to you guys. If you have, it should have been on the agenda. If you have time for me to please read that.
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So this letter was composed actually on the 22nd of this month. And like I said, we had input from several community members on it who wanted us to present it to you guys. So thank you for the opportunity. Safety, staffing, and instruction concerns seem to be the main issues for our school district, not allowing children back to the middle and high school. COVID-19 is not new. It has been here for almost 8 months now. And all of these concerns should have been discussed and addressed over the past several months, not at a board meeting just a few weeks away from transitioning to hybrid and just days away from parents receiving a letter that seemed to show you had a plan and we were set to return. Why the concerns and excuses now? Where was the accountability, the communication between the school board members, our superintendent, and our administration in performing your due diligence in finding ways to get our children back into face-to-face schooling before the board meeting on October 12th? Shippensburg Area School District is not a virtual school. That is now the easy way out, and it is not acceptable anymore, especially when about 90% of schools in our surrounding area, as Mr. Burt pointed out, are either hybrid in some form or full-time face-to-face. We have contacted a few school districts for ideas of what should have been done before the cart was put before the horse. Social distancing, which was one of the major concerns of Mrs. Luffy, finding room for desks to be 6 feet apart. This needs to be relaxed in the classrooms. What is the minimum we can do to accommodate the number of students that would return face-to-face? Do we have a real number? James Buchanan School District has relaxed this to some classrooms with desks 3 feet apart with appropriate face coverings. Lunches. Why can't some children eat in the classroom, others in the cafeteria, and also utilize the auxiliary gyms in overflow? Boiling Springs is using aides to monitor kids. Have you looked into this avenue? Some other ideas. Make more lunch periods to minimize the number of classes at lunch at the same time. Boiling Springs has kids ordering their food for K through 5 grades so they don't wait in line. They say it's actually faster because the food is prepped and ready for them when they come to lunch. This took a lot of planning, but it's working. High school kids are going through the line but socially distanced. And we did scan cards so they don't have to touch the touch pads. No cash transfer. If there's a custodial staffing issue on day shift due to increased cleaning, why not bring someone from night shift to day shift instead? Since thorough cleanings are being done during the day, cleaning at night should not be as involved. You can use the staff you have. Teachers and substitution staffing issues are not our job to address. Just like any business, you should be putting information out there to all sources to fill these positions. And knowing in advance most of these positions are vacant, you should have been proactive. This is not an excuse of not returning our children to school. Why are you giving teachers 3 teaching model choices? During these times, as we adapt to change due to conditions, Mr. Suppo's words, then teachers should only have 1 model to use. This makes it more consistent for all to follow, virtual or face-to-face. Highlighted information from other schools. Boiling Springs, South Middleton School District. K through 5 are in class 5 days, 6th through 12th grade in class 2 days a week, and remote the other 3 days. There has been 1 student-related COVID case in kindergarten class and 1 staff-related case in the 3 to 5 grade building. Neither case has had any spreading, no secondary cases. James Buchanan. Our school district has been brick and mortar K through 9 since the start of the school year. Our high school was AB scheduled due to social distancing issues. Our faculty wears masks and face shields. Our kids wear masks and have done a super job. On November 5th, our high school goes back 100%. Our kids need to be in school. COVID-19 is definitely real, but so are many other illnesses and sicknesses that go through our school districts. Greencastle Area School District. This is a very comparable school to the number of students that Shippensburg Middle School and High School have. Not all desks are 6 feet apart, hence the full day of mask wearing. Students at the high school are eating in the cafe and in classrooms where 6 feet distancing is possible. Teachers must wear masks or shields all day long. Hand sanitizing stations are placed throughout the hallways and classrooms. 7 months ago, This country, as well as the rest of the world, was presented with a unique health crisis. COVID-19 was a new and unknown virus with unique symptoms and insidious spread and unknown treatment. Given this situation, the world at large, including our educational institutions, shut down in an attempt to slow the spread and buy time to learn more about this virus and how best to combat it. This was also done to allow our hospital systems, already taxed in the middle of flu season, not to be overwhelmed or unable to care for patients, as we had seen in other countries, as well as here in New York City. As a registered nurse who cares for the sickest patients in critical care in our own community, I can tell you this was the best decision at that time. This virus is indeed real and can be absolutely devastating. I've seen this firsthand. However, we have learned much in the past 7 months, and it is time to move forward. According to the CDC, only 1/3 of COVID-19 infections occur in those under the age of 30, and 93% of deaths are age 50 or older, making school-age children both the least likely to contract or have fatal outcomes of this virus. Furthermore, those with one or more underlying medical conditions, such as kidney disease, heart disease, diabetes, obesity, and chronic lung diseases, are more likely to contract and have negative outcomes of the virus. Recovery rates for COVID-19 are above 97%, and the majority of cases are classified as mild to moderate. This is not to say that there is no risk to our children returning to school. There is risk in everything, but data has shown that children are at greater risk of contracting the flu, RSV, rotavirus, etc. than COVID-19. Yet every flu season, we send our children to school without a second thought. This virus is not going away. Unfortunately, it will continue to spread until some type of herd immunity is achieved or a readily available, safe, and effective vaccine has been developed. Neither of these things are going to happen anytime soon. So like we do with every decision in our lives, we must weigh the pros and cons of our decisions and mitigate what risks we can. This summer, the CDC, as well as state and local health officials, put forth guidelines to help us open our schools for our children. Surveys were sent home to gauge the level of comfort we as parents had in sending our children to school with these guidelines in place and with the understanding that there is no such thing as zero risk. The school board has either failed to be able to put an effective plan in place or has totally disregarded the wishes of a majority of parents and students who have weighed risk versus benefit and know that not allowing our children the opportunity for quality education far outweighs the small risk this virus presents if health and safety protocols are followed. None of us asked to be placed in the situation where we must navigate life in the middle of a pandemic, but for many of us, we have made what changes were necessary, dealt with ever-changing protocols, and learned that it can be done as safely and effectively as possible. Per the CDC, the unique and critical role that schools play make them a priority for opening and remaining open, enabling students to receive both academic instruction and support, as well as critical services. As for the overall risk to health, per the CDC, while some children have been sick with COVID-19, adults make up nearly 95% of reported COVID-19 cases. Early reports suggest children are less likely to get COVID-19 than adults, and when they do get COVID-19, they generally have less serious illness. As of July 21st, 2020, 6.6% of reported COVID-19 cases and less than 0.1% of COVID-19 related deaths are among children and adolescents less than 18 years of age in the United States. Early reports suggest the number of COVID-19 cases among children may vary by age and other factors. Adolescents aged 10 to 17 may be more likely to become infected with SARS-CoV-2 than younger children, but adolescents do not appear to be at higher risk of developing severe illness. When speaking in regards to the importance of in-person learning, the CDC states, schools are a fundamental part of the infrastructure of communities. Schools provide safe and supportive environments, structure, and routines for children, as well as other needed support services to children and families. Schools play a vital role in the economic health of communities by employing teachers and other staff and helping parents, guardians, and caregivers work. Studies show that students have experienced learning loss during the period of school closure and summer months. In-person instruction for students has advantages over virtual learning, particularly when virtual learning was not the planned format for instruction, and schools may not have the resources or capability to transition fully to virtual learning. In-person classroom instruction has the added benefit for many students of interpersonal interaction between the student and teacher and student and peers. Teachers are more able to actively participate in student learning, provide feedback as students encounter challenges, and promote active learning among students. Social interaction among children in grades K through 12 is important not only for emotional well-being, but also for the children's language, communication, social, and interpersonal skills. Some students may have experienced social isolation and increased anxiety while not physically being in school due to COVID-19. Resuming in-person instruction can support students' social and emotional well-being. Schools also provide critical psychological, mental, and behavioral health, psychological counseling, and mental and behavioral assessment services to children who may not have access to these services outside of school. School closures have limited the availability of these services. Furthermore, isolation and uncertainty about COVID-19 pandemic can create feelings of hopelessness and anxiety while removing important sources of social support. Finally, having opportunities to be physically active through recess and physical education can help improve students' feelings of anxiety and sadness. Not only do I, as a frontline care worker, believe that continuing to deprive our children of the education and resources they need poses a greater risk to their overall health and well-being than the risk of COVID-19, but other healthcare professionals as well. I've discussed this with local physicians who work within this community who agree that the benefits of mitigating this virus must not come at a greater risk to our children's overall well-being. In March, we knew school was going to look a little different for the 2020-21 school year. What was done in March, April, May, June, July, August, September, and now October to get these students back in the classroom. The Shippensburg Area School District is in the midst of a public crisis and seems to be out of control and unraveling. On August 6th, a survey was sent to families asking all K-12 families about virtual and face-to-face instruction. To date, the results of this survey were never released to the community. The lack of transparency has caused mistrust between the current Shippensburg School Board and the community. We can only assume the majority of parents voted for virtual learning, since that was the decision made by administration and the school board. However, there have been some numbers thrown around during meetings, such as 70% of parents want some sort of hybrid learning model or want their children back face-to-face. If numbers are going to be thrown around, then the data needs to be publicly shared, especially when decisions are being made about our children's education, which has a direct effect on their deteriorating mental health. There should have been a second survey after August 6th because the first survey was done before health and safety guidelines were established. If a second survey was done, we would have had an exact number of how many parents wanted their children to continue with virtual or if they felt safe sending their child to school. Parents know what is best for their child and should have a say in what kind of education they are receiving. I personally want my child in school. She is not thriving academically, mentally, or socially right now. She is one of the 49% of middle school students who is failing one or more classes. Up until this year, she was an average to above average student. When I reached out to her assistant principal, he said they were reaching out to parents whose students were completely disengaged. I asked him to define disengaged to me. He said it was the students who weren't showing up, failing, or not completing work. I disagree. My student is failing 4 of her 5 classes. She is on time to all virtual classes. She is overwhelmed with the amount of time spent on the computer. Not all teachers use the same platform, so she needs to learn different apps to use for different classes. I am overwhelmed just trying to learn so I can help her. My kiddo, who has never failed a class before, is failing 4 at one time, and she is anxious, overwhelmed, and depressed. She hates school and has loved it ever since kindergarten. Students need to be back in the classroom. 49% of our Shippensburg area middle school students are failing. The indecision, lack of leadership, and inability to look around to see if other districts, either here or across the country, have a better plan seems inexcusable, lazy, and incredibly disappointing. I don't feel you have pulled out all the stops to find a solution to get our kids back to school. When we, the parents, continually hear, "I can't" excuses from the administration, it's perceived as I don't want to. Administration listed a whole lot of problems of why you can't open face-to-face instruction and not one remedy to correct the problem. If you want a solution, you find one. Otherwise, you'll keep finding more excuses, and we need solutions. Here are some questions we have for Dr. Suppo. Have you taken it upon yourself to ask the teachers what the problems really are and what they need? Have you met with parents? Have you taken a tour of the buildings for yourself? If not, why haven't you? Have you looked to other districts that seem to be handling this far better than our own? What is your hired medical physician saying in regards to opening up? We haven't heard the board mention any recommendations from Dr. Wellman. What is the plan to get these failing kids back on grade level? Did you know there is a 66% decline in referrals to children and youth from March to May alone? Yet the emergency room is still seeing the same number of kids presenting with abuse. What are we doing to protect the physical and emotional well-being of our students? The fact is, schools all over are having problems and doing the best they can, and some are doing better than others. The successful ones are the districts that communicated with their teachers because they are the ones carrying out the plans. The successful ones seem to have worked with the parents to offer a choice. Lastly, the successful ones came up with a plan everybody could work with and stood by that decision. In an effort to make everybody happy, the administration and school board has upset the vast majority. The community members of Parents Voice for Choice are dedicated to ensuring the children of Shippensburg School District are afforded the ability to participate in the education that creates the best learning environment. As elected members of the school board, your job is to serve as a representative of the community, to work for the people. This has not been the way of the school board. Trust, accountability, and transparency are the only way to operate a healthy educational system. Personal agendas, private meetings, and special interests will not be tolerated in Shippensburg. However, the past cannot be changed, but the future can be shaped. And it is time the board members listen and accept people's decision to allow for in-school instruction. We as community members, Parents Voice for Choice, propose this. 1, all children that are disengaged, failing one or more classes, need to be given the opportunity to return face-to-face, just the same as the IEP children. This needs to happen. This was discussed at the last board meeting and requested for more information to get those failing in virtual setting a choice to return to school. 49% of our children failing in the middle school is not acceptable. A plan should be in place by 11/9/20, and due date to have these children returned of 11/16/20. 2, a survey needs to be sent out to all parents of the school district, giving a choice of returning face-to-face 4 days a week or fully virtual starting the third marking period, depending on which learning instruction the family chooses. This will give you a good idea of the number of students you will have face-to-face versus virtual, and you can begin to plan for a better return of students and teachers. This will also give you ample time to discuss with your teachers to see who needs to stay virtual due to health conditions and others that are available to return face-to-face teaching. The survey needs to be sent out to parents and returned back to the school by 12/1/20. This will give sufficient time to adjust your safety guidelines as far as social distancing in classrooms during lunches and address teacher substitution issues and custodial issues. 3, implement a waiver of liability and symptom checker for your parents to sign that want their child to come back to school for face-to-face learning. You can check with your legal counsel as well as insurance company for help. 4, open the school board meetings to allow for face-to-face participation. Parents want to be involved. You as a school board have had 7 months to figure out how to return our children to school as safely as possible. Where other school districts have had success in safe return with little to no positive cases, you've failed to do the same. You've been given ample time and we've been waiting long enough. We will no longer sit idly by and watch our children continue to fall behind and see their overall health and safety continue to be put at risk. Allow us as parents and community members to decide the risk versus benefits for our children. Make a firm plan to have those children who want and need in-person instruction back in our schools full-time while following suggested health and safety measures by the beginning of the third marking period, and allow those who are at greater risk or are uncomfortable with returning the option of full-time virtual. We will advocate for our children. Will you? Thank you for your time.
Aaron, thank you for your comment. We have 2 more hands raised. Anthony Weber. Anthony, when your microphone is unmuted, please state your name and address for the record, and the board welcomes your comment.
Good evening. My name is Anthony Weber. I live on Mapleton Road here in Shippensburg, and I am also the Shippensburg Area Education Association president. The comments that I wanted to make this evening go out to the entire community, as well as the school board and the administration. The administration and the school board, I believe, have always been working in the best interest of children, and they've been also working in the best way possible to support us as teachers. I have children in the elementary buildings and the intermediate building, and I also believe that our teachers have bent over backwards time and time again to help students who are struggling. Oftentimes, some of those kids do not engage, as we've heard before. At the same time, our teachers are always open to new ideas and problem solving and solutions. I know that staffing has been an issue across the entire district, and any solutions that come in regard to those would be more than welcome by our teachers. We have been working far more hours than I've ever heard of since I've been here, and I've been in the district since 2005. What we would like to see as teachers is the continued work between the administration and the school board to try to bring kids back when it is sound and safe. We also have teachers in the district with children in the district who, unfortunately, due to certain medical concerns, not be able to return to teaching. So this creates a bigger problem. I understand the data and I understand the guidelines from the CDC, and we as teachers try as best as possible to meet with what we've been given as a safety plan and the guidelines. We just continue to work and do our jobs as best we can. I believe that all teachers are giving everything they can to make sure that students don't feel disengaged and don't feel secluded, although we realize that is extremely difficult in this situation. We would love no more than to be able to bring kids back, and this awkward and frustrating pandemic continues. But we also fear for the kids and for the teachers and their families. We also have taken a great look at plans, not just within our schools, but how we're going to handle the upcoming holiday situation. Many families canceling get-togethers because they know that the transmission rates that may happen during these family get-togethers may then be brought back into our schools, which would further hamper our ability to teach kids in person. So I just would like to, say to the community that many teachers, all the administration and the school board, which I believe has been doing a great job trying to speak to community members and trying to speak to teachers and administration, are continuing to try to bring kids back in the safest and quickest way possible. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Anthony. Appreciate your comment. There's one more hand raised, Becky Wolfinger. Becky, when your microphone is unmuted, please state your name and address for the record, and the board welcomes your comment.
Thank you. I appreciate it. This is Becky Wolfinger. I live in Southampton Township. So I am making these comments on the behalf of my students who attend the intermediate and middle school, and am requesting that they return face-to-face for their futures. 7 months with no progress of our children returning face-to-face is not acceptable. It is failure and a dereliction of your duties as representatives of our students. As a mom of 4 kids, of which 2 have graduated from this district already, I have never seen so much failure of leadership from our district. A leader is a problem solver, a creative thinker, a person who listens to others that they represent, a person who forms opinions and constructs plans around facts, not around ideology. Leaders are not afraid to admit when they have failed and are willing to grow from the experience to find solutions so that mistakes do not repeat themselves over and over again. Leaders seek experience of others who are finding ways to problem solve, even when those same people have been dealt the same hand of cards. I find it completely heartbreaking that our students are falling victim of your failed leadership with no end in sight. How is it possible that 90% of our surrounding districts are making it happen? How is it possible that they are finding solutions and all we are finding is more excuses? Why is it that at the last board meeting, when the rubber was to meet the road and the students were to return hybrid, then all of a sudden we're talking about having this huge staffing issue? There is no transparency, which makes us question the effectiveness of our administrators. I have shared many times through this COVID craziness, my youngest and the challenges that she has faced with not having a great virtual experience and how she struggled and cried daily. I am happy to report that that has all changed since returning to hybrid. That little bit of face-to-face interaction with other kids has made all of the difference to her emotional stability and her academically. I have seen her start to blossom again, regain confidence in herself, and smile again when she knows it's a school day. I would like to say, as a mom with students at the intermediate and middle school, that Miss Mowry in the intermediate is a leader. She is a problem solver. She is responsive and truly cares about the success of the students at the intermediate school. You know, there's been a lot of talk in the last couple days about students not doing their part, or parents wanting babysitters for their kids. And this is coming from teachers in our district, and I find it abhorrent. There is no way that 49% of middle school students failing at least one or more classes is the fault of the students, especially when we are talking about some of the students that are honor students. Kids all have different learning styles, where some will succeed and get by virtually, others will falter. My question is, will we continue to let them falter and let a whole generation of students just skirt by because of failed leadership? You are taking away the opportunity from our students with every single day that passes, that you do not come up with some plan to get our kids back face to face. Personally, I have seen my son, who is gifted with music. I mean, the kid is just so gifted, who is ready to stop playing his instrument. I can no longer count on my hands and feet the times he sat there listening and on the board meetings, as he is right now, and where he has said, wow, they just don't care about the band students. I guess I should have played football. What do I tell my son that potentially could have had a scholarship in his future, that now will refuse to pick up his instrument because he gets one whole Zoom a week with his band teacher, but yet this is a subject that he gets a grade for? And this is something that will impact his future GPA, but it doesn't seem to be, as important as football. Let's figure out how many people can get in those stands, right? I personally do not fault our teachers. I think that they are doing the best job possible in these circumstances. I fault the lack of communication, the lack of transparency, and more importantly, the fault of the leadership of Dr. Suppo. And as a parent in this community, I request his immediate resignation, since he cannot find solutions for our students to get back face to face. He can only find excuses. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. I do not see any more raised hands. We'll move on to the agenda. Item number 4 is reports. Franklin County Career Center report. Mr. Suiters.
None this evening. Thank you.
I'm not aware of any board committee meetings yet. I do understand that there may be some scheduled soon. Is that correct, Dr. Suppo?
That is correct. We have a couple of committee meetings that will be coming up. We just haven't set a date yet.
Okay. We'll move on to the curriculum report. Sherry Woodall, our curriculum director, has a future ready index update. Sherry?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to present tonight. I am going to share my screen real quick. Okay, so the Future Ready Index data has been released for the 2020 school year. I will say that a lot of the data has not been updated due to the lack of testing last year with COVID-19. Just to give everybody a reminder of what the Future Ready Index dashboard looks like, when you go to the Future Ready dashboard website, which we have postings for it on the district website, you will see state assessment measures, on-track measures, and college career measures. And those are broken down into the percent of students proficient in advanced for algebra, English language arts, mathematics, and it also looks at the growth measures for the state assessment measures. The on-track measures are English language proficiency and regular attendance. And then the college and career measures are the career standards benchmarks and the 4-year graduation cohort. When we look at the progress determinations, again, this is just a reminder that blue means that we've met 2030 goals, for the statewide data. where the state wants us to be at the year 2030. Green means that we've met or exceeded the current year's goal that the state has set. And red means that we are not meeting the target that the state has set. If we have an up arrow, that means that the data has increased from the previous year. Down arrow means that the data has not increased or has decreased from the previous year. Now, again, due to COVID-19, much of the data remains from the 2019 Future Ready Index. So I'm not going to read through everything here, but basically the newest updated data that they have is for our regular attendance and the 4-year cohort graduation. So when I look through this, I just wanted to show you guys, this was the 2018-19 data. So if you do look at the Future Ready Index, this data is actually from last year. So this is the 2018-19 junior class data for the algebra, biology, and literature keystone exam. So in algebra, when we took the assessment in 2017-18, it was 78 was what we scored for proficient and advanced. The goal for us was 47.6. The state average was 45.2. And we were above the 2030 goal, though we had a decrease from the previous year. Biology, we were at 61.9. The Future Ready Index goal was 66.2. The state average was 66. We had a decrease and we did not meet that goal. That's why we were red. And then literature, we were 75.2. The goal for the year was 62.1. The state average was 72.7. So we met the Future Ready Index goal, but we had a decrease from the previous year. Looking at the new data. So I highlighted the new data because that was what it was updated. When we look at the regular attendance data, even though it's new data, it's actually from the 2018-19 school year. So attendance and 4-year graduation is always a year lagging in their data. So when we looked at the attendance rate for the 2018-2019 school year, the high school had 86.4. The goal for being to exceed the state average or the state required number is 94.1. We met their average number. We met the normal number that they wanted us to meet. The way they look at attendance is they take the lowest 25 percentile in the state, and that's red. The highest 70 or above the 75th percentile, so the highest 25 percentile points is blue. We fell somewhere in between 26 and 74 for the percentile, and that's why we were green. The 4-year graduation cohort. So again, this is 2018-2019 graduation year, 93.2. The Future Ready Index goal that we had was 86.5, and we actually exceeded our 2030 goal for that, and we increased from the previous year. Again, those were the 2 new benchmarks for the Shippensburg area senior high school. Looking at SAMs, again, the PSSA data is old data. That is from the 2018-19 school year, since we did not test in 2019-20 due to COVID. So the new data that we have, again, this is 2018-2019 attendance, but it's considered new because the attendance is always a year lagging. We were at 92.4 for SAMs, and that is up from 94.1 in the 2017-18 school year. We did meet the statewide average, so we were in between that 25th and 26th and 74th percentile for attendance. And if we would have went above 94.1, we would have been blue. SACE, the same thing. So we have the PSSA scores from the 2017-2018 school year. The regular attendance data, which is new, but it is from the 2017-18 school year, is 92.4. That is down from 93.2 in the previous year. If we were above 94.1, we would be blue, but we were again in between that 26th and 74th percentile range. For LORs, their new regular attendance, again for the 2018-2019 school year, was 99.2% of their students had regular attendance. That was up from 95.4 the prior year. And they exceeded that statewide average, or they exceeded that 94.1. That's why they are blue. So they were above the 75th percentile for attendance. For Nancy Grayson, their attendance was 94.5. Again, that high benchmark for being above the 75th percentile was 94.1. So Nancy Grayson was a blue, and that is up from that is down from 94.7 the prior year. Not much down, 94.5 compared to 94.7. And finally, James Bird, they are at 89.9% for their attendance rate. Their previous year was 84% for attendance rate, so they have been up. They were between that 26th and 74th percentile, so they did not exceed the 94.1. So they ended up being green for their Future Ready Index. I wish I had more groundbreaking data for you guys, but without the testing last year, much of the Future Ready Index has not changed. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you guys.
Thank you, Sherry.
I have one question. This is Nathan Goetz. Have we received any guidance about what testing may look like this year?
So as of right now, the Keystones and PSSAs are still on. We are actually scheduled for the winter Keystones in January. That is still to be taking place in person. The state has not given any guidelines or regulations for virtual testing, so they are still expecting it to take place in person. There is a Senate bill that is up for passing that if a waiver does become available nationally, so if the federal government allows for states to submit waivers to testing, Pennsylvania will submit a waiver for the 2020-2021 school year to waive testing. But as of right now, the federal government has not made that an option.
Okay, thank you.
Nathan, Mr. Geis, Dr. Geis, excuse me, I'll just add, they did extend that window for the winter testing is the one change that they made. But other than that, we've not really heard much from the state.
Thank you, Sherry. Appreciate the report. We'll move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Suppo.
Thank you. I've two items I wanted to mention tonight very quickly. I talked with Mr. Butterbaugh and Mr. Suiters, the board president and vice president, about scheduling a school board executive session in the very near future here to discuss safety, security, personnel, and labor relations matters. So we'll be looking or reaching out to all the board members to find a date for that executive session. Also, in a couple of the comments that we received tonight, there were suggestions about a parent survey, and that's something that we have been working on in the administration. So we do have a survey that we're hoping to complete here in the next several days, and we will be sending that out to all of our secondary families. And of course, we will share that information, the results of that information with our community, our parents, and our board. And that will hopefully provide us with some guidance in how we might move forward with our plans for the future. That is all for the superintendent's report.
Okay, we'll move on to the discussion agenda. For the benefit of the public to explain our agenda, the discussion agenda are items that the board will not be voting on this evening. They're items that we will go over and will carry over to the next board agenda for vote. These items are meant for board discussion and for board members. Any questions you have on these items, you may ask them tonight, and any questions in between now and the next meeting, please get those to Dr. Suppo so you can get your answers. 5A is the agreement with the Capital Area Intermediate Unit for 48 Garrett's Educational Services. 5B is a copier lease agreement, DSI Great American Leasing. C is the E-rate letter of agency and contract renewal. 5D is a memorandum of understanding between the Shippensburg Educational Support Association and the school district. E is the memorandum of understanding between the Shippensburg Education Association, Support Professional Association, and the district. F is your Interscholastic Unified Indoor Bounce Program. So first of all, do any members have any questions regarding any items 5A through F? Okay, hearing no questions. If you have any questions in the meanwhile, please get them to the administration to get those answered. Move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda is filled with items that are regular type of items. So they base it on the consent, and we vote on all of these at one time. 6A is the approval of minutes from October 12th. 6B is your finance reports. 6C, personnel administration. The administration is recommends the acceptance of the following resignation for the purposes of retirement. Margaret Peggy Kreider, who is our supervisor of special education. She'll be leaving us January 1st, 2021 to enjoy retirement. C2, administration recommends approval of the following transfer. Christopher Devius from family and consumer science teacher to Shippensburg area virtual education coordinator at the high school. This will be effective January 28th, 2021. Administration recommends approval of the following appointments. Heather Bear-Wingert, long-term substitute, grade 5 teacher at intermediate school. Alyssa Bender, long-term substitute, virtual grade 3 teacher at Nancy Grayson. Jerry Hartman, long-term substitute, 7th and 8th grade ELA teacher at the middle school. The administration recommends approval of the following position title change. Sarah Gerber from virtual mathematics teacher to Shippensburg area virtual education coordinator. Support staff. Administration recommends approval of the following support staff of employees who have completed 60-day probationary period and reached regular status. Grace Irvin, LPN at Grace B. Lorza Elementary School. Suzanne Ogden, cafeteria kitchen helper at the senior high school. Andrea Thompson, classroom assistant at Nancy Grayson. And Stephen Van Pelt, utility maintenance employee district-wide. The administration recommends acceptance of the following resignations. Patricia Clugston, classroom assistant part-time at the intermediate school, effective October 30th. Julie Deal, cafeteria cashier helper part-time at the middle school, retroactive to October 9th. Michael McMullen, custodian part-time at the intermediate school, effective January 1st, 2021 for the purposes of retirement. The administration recommends approval of the following promotions. Pamela Strickler from custodian part-time to custodian full-time at the senior high school. Vesta Yeager from custodian part-time to custodian floater full-time district-wide. The administration recommends approval of the following transfer. Scott Wright from custodian full-time at Nancy Grayson to custodian part-time at the intermediate school. Item D, approval of new Boyo transportation van drivers. E, Board of School Directors meeting schedule for 2021. F, authorization for payment of bills. G, agreement with BTI School Services. And H, policy revision approval of policy 5 organization. Does any member want to take any item on the consent agenda from 6A through 6H separate?
This is Dwayne Burt. I would like to hear more discussion on, I believe there were 2 items, virtual education coordinator.
What precisely are you looking for, Dwayne?
I'd like to take them separate, and I would like for the superintendent to really explain the thought processes there. What are we really expecting to gain with these positions? Are they establishing new positions, and what impact they may have once we do this on having enough positions and so forth to eventually integrate students back into the classrooms in the middle school and high school in a face-to-face type model. Thank you.
Okay, am I assuming correctly then that we are, just for my purposes of the vote, we're talking about C2 and C4, is that correct? And C6.
It looks like C2 and C6 to me.
I believe the questions are on C2 and C6. Do you want me to address those now, or do you want to vote and then I can address them.
I'd like them to be taken separately, please.
All right, so we'll take C2 and C6 separately. Any other items that any board member wants to take separate on the consent agenda? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to approve items 6A through 6, I think it was H. Is that correct?
That is
Want a
correct.
motion?
6H minus C2 and C6. Is there a motion to approve?
Fred Scott, make a motion to approve except those two items.
Mr. Scott makes a motion to approve. Is there a second on the motion?
Wayne Burt,
Mr. Burt seconds the motion. Roll call.
Dr. Nathan Goetz,
Nathan Goetz, yes.
Dr. Michael Lyman,
Michael Lyman, yes.
Mr. Fred Scott,
Fred Scott, yes.
Dr. Gino Torrey,
Gino Torrey, yes.
Mr. Jim Bard,
Jim Bard, yes.
Mrs. Erica Berg,
Erica Berg, yes.
Mr. Dwayne Burt,
Wayne Burt, yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Charlie Shooters, yes.
Mr. Mark Butterball.
Mark Butterball, yes.
Motion
Is there a
carried
mo-
unanimously.
Thank you, Christie. Is there a motion to approve C2 and C6?
Erica Berg moves to approve C2 and C6.
Okay, motion made by Mrs. Berg. Is there a second on the motion?
Second, Dr. Lyman.
Dr. Lyman seconds. Discussion? Dr. Suppo?
Yeah, so item C2 is, well, both of these positions are existing positions. They were created a number of years ago with the Keola program. And all we are really doing is hiring Mr. Tobias, who will replace Mr. Tourneau, who's currently in that position. He'll be retiring here at the end of the year. The name change itself, it was, of course, previously called a virtual education or excuse me, virtual mathematics teacher. And we simply changed the name to virtual education coordinator to be more reflective of the duties that they perform. In looking at and reviewing what they are, the bulk of their positions are, they involve coordinating the students who are going to be entering the Keola program, enrolling them, as well as providing opportunities for them to come in when needed and work in the district. They do some minor tutoring, but most of that really occurs with the classroom teacher or the teacher who is in charge of the Keola course. And then, of course, if there are other services in the district that they need to help coordinate that child with, be it guidance services, be it other tutoring for other subjects, that they would help do that. So that's really these two positions. The item 6, Mrs. Gerber, she is a current employee. She's already in that position, and it simply is changing the name of the position to be consistent with what we wanted to do with Mr. Tobias, who is, again, would take that position over from Mr. Tourneau, who's retiring.
This is Dwayne Burt. So just to be clear, these positions, these two positions really, for the most part, aren't teaching, but rather coordinating the exit of Shippensburg virtual students to Keola. Is that correct? And then if so, can you expand upon which grades we're focusing on or which grades we're talking about here?
Yeah, and I'll ask Mrs. Woodall to chime in here as well, because she works very closely with these two professionals or with these two positions. But these positions handle not only the enrollment and the classes that the students are in, but also the daily attendance, also looking at the work that's completed and following up with students who are in need of additional assistance. And primarily, Sarah Gerber is working for, Sarah Gerber is working with students who are at that middle school level and elementary level. And Mr. Tourneau, that position was primarily working with senior high students.
And I would like to add that there is a lot of communications, and they do tutoring. Like Mrs. Gerber spends a lot of her day tutoring some of our elementary and middle school students through the Keola program. So they have their teachers online that they get tutoring from, but Mrs. Gerber provides them additional tutoring on top of that teacher online. Mr. Tourneau, which will be Mr. DeBias if this is approved, he also does do tutoring with students. Now, last year when students were coming in face-to-face, they would be in the classroom, like they would come into school with Mr. Tourneau and Mrs. Gerber to get some of that attention face-to-face. This year, they're doing Zoom sessions with them to provide that tutoring.
Any other questions, Dwayne?
Oh, thank you.
Any
Could I
other
just-
questions regarding C2 to C2 and C6 in the motion?
This is Dr. Lyman. Just to sort of clarify, I believe these positions were put in place to make the Keola product a little bit more attractive for families so that they would look at that as their online schooling option, where they could come into the schools and get some live tutoring and live help, and just to encourage those that are choosing the online option to go with the Keola rather than some of the other cyber charter options.
That is correct. And it's also meant to provide more of that connection with the district. So even though Keola is run through the Capital Area Intermediate Unit, it's to provide that intermediary to connect the students with our district, because they are still district students when they go to Keola.
A wonderful thing to do. I certainly hope that we're not doing it at the expense of offering the families the choice for a face-to-face delivery for those that would desire that in the middle school and high school. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Yeah, this is Dr. Lyman again. Just to be clear, these positions have been here for like, I don't know, Sherry, you could clear that. It's been like
It's been three years.
Yeah, so these are not positions that are all associated with the current pandemic or the current online environment. These have been in there for long before that was a situation. It's just simply there to help our online students feel more connected to the district and have some additional support.
This is Dwayne Burt. I certainly appreciate those comments. And just to be clear, my comments really were not whether these were new or existing positions, but these are two teaching positions that are with excellent people, and I'm certainly sure are very needed. But these are two teaching positions that, rather than teaching, are coordinating our students that are involved in Keola, an excellent program, and I certainly understand that. It's all wonderful, but we also talked about in the meeting a couple of weeks ago about a shortage of teachers, particularly at the middle school and so forth, that are precluding students, at least in part, precluding students that desire a face-to-face opportunity at the middle and high school, the opportunity for that. So I just make this point that that as we're approving two teaching positions, moving them to coordinators for coordinating the wonderful program that we're doing for our students in the Keola program, that we certainly must find a way to have the teachers necessary to provide the face-to-face opportunity for those students that desire it in the middle school and high school. Thank you.
This is Fred Scott. I sort of agree with Dwayne. We need more teachers and we need more aides within the school district, and we want to do both of these things, because I don't want to see the virtual kids neglected to do the hybrid. So to do both of them, as we've been told by the teachers and the principals, if we want to do that, then we need to bring in more teachers, more aides, and maybe bring some trailers in to provide better classroom and more classroom so we can do both of these. I don't want to see one class get one at the neglection of the other. Thank you.
Any other comments on the motion?
Thank you, Fred.
Hearing none, roll call.
Dr. Michael Lyman,
Michael Lyman, yes.
Mr. Fred Scott,
Fred Scott, yes.
Dr. Gino Torrey,
Gino Torrey, no.
Mr. Jim Bard,
Jim Bard, yes.
Mrs. Erica Berg,
Erica Berg, yes.
Mr. Dwayne Burt,
Dwayne Burt, yes.
Dr. Nathan Goetz,
Nathan Goetz, yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Charlie Shooters, yes.
Mr. Mark Butterball.
Mark Butterball, yes.
Motion carried, 1 no.
Okay, we'll move on. I need the agenda scrolled here down to the action agenda. The action agenda is items that we take individually that were on the previous agenda. 7A is the American National Red Cross Licensed Training Provider Agreement. Is there a motion to approve 7A?
I move to approve 7A.
Motion made by Mrs. Berg to approve 7A. Is there a second to the motion?
Second, Dr. Lyman.
Second by Dr. Lyman. Discussion from the board. Roll call.
Mr. Fred Scott,
Fred Scott, yes.
Dr. Gino Torrey,
Gino Torrey, yes.
Mr. Jim Bard,
Jim Bard, yes.
Mrs. Erica Berg,
Erica Berg, yes.
Mr. Dwayne Burt,
Dwayne Burt, yes.
Dr. Nathan Goetz,
Nathan Goetz, yes.
Dr. Michael Lyman,
Michael Lyman says bless you to Nathan Goetz, and yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Charlie Shooters, yes.
Mr. Mark Butterball.
Mark Butterball, yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you, Christie. 7B is the district solicitor approval to file petition. This is to file a petition for appeal from the decision of the board assessment appeals regarding parcel number, and you can see the parcel number there. This was one of the items that was discussed in the executive session prior to this board meeting. Is there a motion to approve 7B?
I move to approve 7B, Jim Barden.
Mr. Bard motions to approve 7B. Is there a second on the motion?
Nathan Goetz, second.
Dr. Goetz seconds the motion. Discussion from the board. Roll call.
Dr. Gino Torrey,
Gino Torrey, yes.
Mr. Jim Bard,
Jim Bard, yes.
Mrs. Erica Berg,
Erica Berg, yes.
Mr. Dwayne Burt,
Dwayne Burt, yes.
Dr. Nathan Goetz,
Nathan Goetz, yes.
Dr. Michael Lyman,
Michael Lyman, yes.
Mr. Fred Scott,
Fred Scott, yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Charlie Shooters, yes.
Mr. Mark Butterball.
Mark Butterball, yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you, Christie. 7C is the Lincoln Intermediate Unit Number 12 agreement for bilingual psychological services. Is there a motion to approve 7C?
Oh,
Go ahead, I'll second you. Go ahead.
okay. I move to approve item C on the agenda.
Mrs. Byrd motions to approve 7C. The motion was seconded by Mr. Scott. Discussion from the board. Roll call.
Mr. Jim Bard,
Jim Bard, yes.
Mrs. Erica Berg,
Erica Berg, yes.
Mr. Dwayne Burt,
Dwayne Burt, yes.
Dr. Nathan Goetz,
Nathan Goetz, yes.
Dr. Michael Lyman,
Lyman, yes.
Mr. Fred Scott,
Fred Scott, yes.
Dr. Gino Torrey,
Gino Torrey, yes.
Mr. Charlie Suiters,
Charlie Shooters, yes.
Mr. Mark Butterball.
Mark Butterball, yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you, Christie. We'll move on to board comments. And again, if I do miss a board member, please speak up because my Zoom thingy jumps around from people to people. So my list doesn't always stay the same. First up will be Dr. Nathan Goetz. Dr. Goetz, any comments?
No, I guess not. Not tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Bard?
Just a couple comments. I think I agree with what Fred was trying to say there, and Dwayne, we need to hire more teachers to get these kids back in school so we can do it. I mean, we've been told that we can't do it because of lack of teachers. So we got to look at trying to get some teachers' age, what have you, whatever we got to do to get the kids back in school. That's it. Thanks.
Mr. Scott?
No, I have nothing. I said what I had to say.
Dr. Torrey?
Nothing at this time. Thank you.
Mr. Burt?
This is Dwayne Burt. Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to start with a question for the superintendent. I am understanding that several of our neighboring school districts through the Superintendents Association, AASA, are collaborating and participating in a Brown University developed study that is called National Coronavirus Dashboard. It's a group of the participants are a large number nationwide of students and school districts, and I'm just curious if Shippensburg is participating in that, and if so, what we have learned from that study, and if not, why not?
I have not, excuse me,
That's number one, Mr. President.
we have not participated in that. My understanding, and maybe wrongfully so, but my understanding that was simply a dashboard where they were just collecting data on the number of cases that were occurring in the district, unless we're referring to two different things.
No, perhaps we're talking about exactly the same thing. It's through the Superintendents Association. I understand that participation in it is free, and of course, as participation grows, that makes the numbers more relevant. But it basically is a data-driven approach to look nationwide at the numbers of cases as they relate to elementary students and to overall. It breaks out the difference in transmission in elementary students between the transmission rates at virtual at hybrid and full-on face-to-face. And then it has an iteration for the entire school district. It's very revealing, and I would recommend that we take a look at that. But I certainly do know that some of our neighboring school districts who are working in collaboration to provide families with more options for face-to-face delivery are using that, at least in part, to drive their decision making, because it's very interesting. A couple of main things that it shows, but for example, is that it shows that that as we would expect, there's more transmission in a full-on face-to-face delivery than there is in a hybrid model, and we would expect that. It also shows that there's much less transmission rate in elementary students than there is in secondary students, but even on average, that the national transmission rate in schools is significantly less than we have been experiencing in both Franklin and Cumberland counties. And as such, the bottom line for what it is showing today is that schools are not super spreaders. So that's number one, and I would just encourage that we might want to take a look at that, because I know neighboring school districts again are using it to make decisions as it relates to reintegration, for example, of elementary first into full-on face-to-face, and delaying on secondary for things like that. That's number one. I apologize. Number two, the large subject that exists in the room tonight that we really we really haven't addressed. I first learned of in social media, and then saw some reports that corroborate. And I believe the public really has a right to know. You know, I've heard because you couldn't know otherwise, and I didn't know until I saw these numbers. But when we talk about the parents that are begging for a more for integration of more face-to-face time for the students in the middle school and high school, that's not just because it's popular. That's because what we're doing, I believe, and what these numbers that I'm going to reveal to the public, I believe they indicate that we're failing. These numbers here show for the middle school that there are, in fact, 48% of the students that currently have a failing grade. That's either an F or D. I took that by the number of students we have, I believe, in the middle school. Last information they sent me, 782 students. Maybe that's about right. If it's not, correct me. Correct me if I'm wrong. So 48% of the students, that must be about 375 students in the middle school that are failing. Now, if I'm reading the information that you sent me incorrectly, then please stop me and help me to understand these numbers better. It goes on to say that 14% of the students at the middle school are failing 4 or more core subjects. Again, I did the math on that. That's 109 students. And then they added this comment that over half of those, 14% are failing 4 or more core subjects. Over half of those are due to attendance. And so I just wondered, well, does that mean if they simply got on the bus and delivered over to the school and got off, that a large chunk of that problem goes away? Not that I'm interested in playing games here. I would also assume that by going to school, that they would actually learn something while they're there. And then I look at the high school numbers and I can wrap this up. But I do have some question about the numbers, but it looks to me like we have twice as many students disengaged this year as we did last year. It looks like that we have 47 students that are failing in the 9th grade, 54 students in the 10th grade, 34 students in the 11th grade, 12 and 29 students in the 12th grade. Is that right? We have another 164 students in the high school that are failing. Here's another set of numbers. It looks like students failing 2 classes is twice as great as it was last year. Students failing 3 classes is 5 times as great as it was last year. And students failing 4 or more classes is 9 times as great as it was last year. And so I'll just sum this up. I would like, Dr. Seppo, for you and for the administration to immediately develop a plan to address this catastrophic failure within our school district, present to the board and to our community what our plans are to get our school district back on track. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burt.
Mr. Burt, if I could address a couple of those questions. So just to go back on a couple of questions, you had mentioned the 48% of students failing, I guess is probably, just to be clear, that's 48% of students with an F or a D. Now, if you remove one of the problems that we see as we analyze this is we also have the exploratory courses. If you remove those grades from the exploratory courses, it takes that down to 14.37%. So what we see there in analyzing this information is a problem, not with all, but with some of those exploratory courses. And so why are students failing those is a concern, but certainly our core subjects as well. going back to the high school, the question with regard to engagement, and looking at those numbers and compared to last year, it's very difficult to compare that because it's really not apples to oranges. And what I mean by that is if you look at the spring of last year, we were looking at engagement as if a student did something that week in that subject, then we considered them to be engaged. But our expectation is much higher this year. So we expect them to be engaged on a daily basis. So when you look at those engagement numbers, certainly they're going to be higher because the expectation is higher. And similarly, I would point that out with grading as well. Last year in the spring with the grading that we conducted, the expectation was much less than what it is this year with the normal grading system. And of course, if you're looking or if you're comparing that back to the fall of 1920, and there's no question that students are more successful being in the classroom and being in our schools as compared to working virtually or online. I want to clear something up here because there seems to be some misconception that I'm hearing between board and between, quite frankly, some of the community. No one wants kids in school more than I do. I've stated that very clearly on many occasions. And going back to a couple of weeks ago and the information that we presented, we never said we can't. We didn't say that these obstacles weren't able to be overcome. We simply wanted to be transparent and point out that there were some things that we need to address in order to be successful in getting our kids back to school. One of them being safety measures. If we want kids back in school, then we have to be able to relax some of those safety measures. I've heard conversations on both sides of that where people have said, no, you can't relax any of the safety measures. And then on the other hand, people saying, well, no, you should relax safety measures to get our kids back in school. We simply were pointing out some of the things that we need to work on as a district in order to be able to implement a program, be it hybrid, be it full-time in our schools, 4 days a week, 5 days a week, that need to be addressed in order to be able to do that. My administration and myself, along with many board members and our teachers, have all worked very hard. We all want our kids back in school. Thank you.
Dr. Torrey, did I come to you yet?
I am here, and I thank you for the opportunity. Just to follow up with what was just shared, I think what's missing is the word plan. Do we have a plan to get us back in? I'm hearing the same thing everyone's hearing, and I'm hearing requests for at least a plan to successfully do it. So that's my comments. Thank you.
Mrs. Byrd.
I have no comments tonight. Thank you.
Dr. Lyman.
I would just second what the superintendent said. I think we all want our kids back live in school. We just need to figure out the safest way to do it. We're not an online school, and we'll get there eventually, but we have to do it right.
Mr. Suitors.
Where to start? I hear both sides, and the plan is the only thing that's really missing. I think everybody has ideas, but I don't think there's really a plan. And I don't know who needs to be involved in that, but I would think the start of that was with the meetings that the faculty and stuff had to try to get things what we were doing in the spring. I think they need to continue, and we got to get more people involved in the idea so we can hear both sides and come to neutral ground and get some of our students back in, if not all. I don't know, we talked about different committees and everything, but nothing expired from that, so that's all.
Thank you. I just had a few comments. First off, I would like to thank and really give a shout out to our teachers who are working diligently and under a lot of stress to deliver the best education they can to our students. And on behalf of the whole board, thank you. You have been warriors and heroes in this, and we appreciate every effort that you are putting forth for our students. I apologize that I was not at the last board meeting. I think that in 10 years, that may have been the second board meeting I've ever had to miss. I got to admit that I was deeply disappointed with what the board did at the last board meeting. The knee-jerk reactions need to stop. It's not fair to parents who are trying to make plans for their students. I've always been on the side of choice. For some reason, we as a board, or I shouldn't say we, but some board members believe that, you know, students who attend virtually should have that choice to do that. But parents who want to send their kids into our schools shouldn't have that choice. And that's just downright wrong. You know, it is about choice. And that's one of the big things here. The second comment I have is I don't understand, and it has never been explained in a board meeting, a committee meeting, or anything that I'm aware of, why other school districts can successfully implement full-time or successfully implement hybrid, but for some reason, Shippensburg School District can't seem to get on the ball with that. I don't understand it. We have very, very talented people in our administration. We have very talented faculty in our classrooms, and we have incredible staff that work under us. And I just can't understand why things can be successfully implemented up and down the Interstate 81 corridor, but when you stop right in Shippensburg and we just can't figure it out. I think we are doing a disservice to our students. And I think we're doing a disservice to parents who simply want a choice to send their kids to school. The reason I have that opinion is I am deeply, deeply concerned about the mental impact on students. I'm deeply concerned about the emotional impact that this is having on students. And I fear that we as a board are going to be dealing with academic regression of students for the next 3 or 4 years. You know, we're going to have kids. I fear that we're going to have kids coming in 5th grade on a 3rd grade reading level because they just can't learn virtually. We've heard it from parents. When we ever vote to go back to school, we're not making parents send their kids back to school. If you want your child to be virtually, they can stay virtual. But what we're not doing is we're not giving kids a chance and parents a choice to send their kids to school who want to go to school, and that's wrong. I guess that's the extent of my comments. I'm hoping that the board can unite here and work with the administration to come up with a plan, because right now, the plan of motions after motions after motions is serving nobody any good. And those are the extent of my comments. We'll now move on to citizen comments regarding non-agenda items. Just like in the prior public comment section, it's for Zoom attendees, and there's a raise hand feature. And I see 3 folks here with raised hands, so that's great. So what you need to do is when I call on your name, your microphone will be unmuted. Please state your name and address for the record, and the board welcomes your comment. The first public comment is Amy Winters. Amy, the board welcomes your comment.
Thank you, Amy Winters. I'm in Southampton Township, Franklin County. First of all, I certainly would like to thank the teachers going above and beyond to make the best of this situation and try to engage all students. But I really had a comment of some of the numbers that were thrown out about the kids that are failing their classes. I think that I'm a little concerned at the downplaying of the 49%. If you take away the exploratory classes, then somehow we're down to a 14% failure of classes, which I see has no point whatsoever in this conversation. It's a graded class. If we weren't going to include exploratories, those classes would be optional, or they wouldn't be graded with letter grades. So if it's a failing class, it's a failing class, whether it's exploratories or it's ELA. But I have to echo Mr. Butterball's comment that if we choose to go into a hybrid model for the upper classes, the 6 through 12, then the people who would like to have their students stay virtual, they have that option. Right now that we're virtual, there is no option for students to go to school, and that's wrong. And hopefully we can come together and create a plan that would make it successful for students to go back to school. Thank you.
Amy, thank you for your comment. Next up is Terry Kunkelman. Terry, once your microphone is unmuted, please state your name and address for the record, and we welcome your comment. Well, she just disappeared. Well, in case she gets back on, the next up is Melissa Jones. Melissa, same instructions. When your mic is unmuted, please state your name and address for the record, and we welcome your comment.
Hi, I'm Melissa Jones, Southampton Township, Franklin County. I'm an employee along with a parent. I have a middle school and a high school student currently, so both are fully virtual. I just want to, first of all, thank Dr. Suppo and the board. I know it was a rash decision, but it was a necessary decision. Teachers are working countless hours and reaching out to so many students. I'm an aide, so I work with in-person along with students at home. It is exhausting. We are trying to keep up with two separate entities. And if we go hybrid, or even when we bring children back in person, we are going to be dealing with that. And the sheer exhaustion of working with both is beyond overwhelming, but we've taken it on. I come home and then I deal with my own children and what they need. I just wish the community would rally around and truly let's make a plan. If we need trailers, like Fred Scott had said, let's get them then. The ventilation systems in our buildings are so old. How can we fix that? Let's make a plan, because no one inside those buildings are opposed to us bringing those children back. What we need is a good plan and how to help them and help keep some distance. It is exhausting to come home and then deal with my own children who still need my help. So I get parents that are frustrated, but reach out to the teachers. They are all more than willing. We've been talking about some plans of teachers that might be willing to just get together and help students. I've told a couple parents that, I work with 6th, 7th, and 8th. If there's any way I can help personally, I would. There's people out there that want to help. So let's become a team instead of totally destroying our town and having these split decisions of this one team that hates everybody and this one team that wants this and this one team that wants that. We've got to somehow unite and make this work. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. The board appreciates your comment. Stephanie Eberly. Stephanie, when your microphone is unmuted, please state your name and address for the record, and the board welcomes your comment.
Just makes me so mad. Good. Stephanie Eberly, Klein Road, Shippensburg. I just it was a question and a suggestion. My question is, why have we not heard from Dr. Wellman, who is our contracted medical professional, on his suggestions of returning or not returning the kids to school? I mean, safety and all of the precautions have been a big reason why, the kids haven't been back in school. But I think it's important that we hear what he suggests. How do we know if can we relax some of the social distancing and some of the safety measures? I did file a right to know asking for if there was any dialogue between Dr. Wellman and the administration and the school board, and my request was denied. I just think that should be public knowledge if we're going to be transparent and build trust issues. Was Dr. Wellman consulted during this process? And I would love for him to present at a school board meeting in the near coming future. That's it.
Thank you, Stephanie. The board appreciates your comment. Next up is Teresa Reed. Teresa, once your microphone is unmuted, state your name and address for the record, and the board welcomes your comment. Teresa?
Mr. Butterball, this is Mrs. Clever. I just wanted to verify that Teresa Reed is unmuted and she is able to speak.
Okay, so there seems to be a problem there. So let's move on to the next one. Jessica Goshorn. Jessica, please state your name and address for the record when your microphone is unmuted, and the board welcomes your comment. Seems like we're having all kinds of problems tonight.
It's showing her mic is muted.
Ms. Goshorn, this is Mrs. Clever, the meeting host. You just need to unmute.
I don't see Miss Goshorn on anymore. I still see Teresa Reed, who's muted, but I'm looking through the attendee list. I don't see Miss Goshorn.
Ms.
Okay,
Goshorn, she is on. She had to be moved over as a panelist because she was using an older version of Zoom. So she is showing as a panelist at the moment.
I can see a little square that says Jessica Goshorn, but it's muted.
Okay, let's move on to the next one and see if we can figure that out. Aaron Gattrell. Aaron, please state your name and address for the record. The board welcomes your comment when your microphone is unmuted.
Hi, this is Erin Gattrell. I'm in Southampton Township, and I just wanted to say that there's been a lot of talk, obviously, about getting the middle and high school students back in hybrid, and that's great. They do need to go back in. Dr. Suppo mentioned they'd be getting a survey to the parents about what their wishes are. I just would like to say that I think a survey needs to go out to all parents, not just the middle and high school, about what our wishes are, because I know at the younger levels, a lot of parents feel they should be moving back into full-time. We've been in school now hybrid for over 2 months, and all the other school districts are in full-time. And I think it would be a normal transition now to move the younger kids to at least a 4-day week. I have a student at the intermediate school. You know, you've been talking about the older kids who are failing. I have an intermediate school student who is failing. She is normally a straight A student. She's failing 2 subjects. She tells me every day, I want to go back to school. So I think, you know, all the parents should be getting the survey and not just the middle and high school parents. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aaron, for your comment. Paul Reed is up next, and my bet is this is probably Teresa Reed.
Hello, Teresa Reed, Southampton Township.
Go ahead, we can hear you.
Thank you. I just wanted to commend the board. I noticed tonight that some of the long-term subs are being hired at a higher rate. I think that is a very important thing that Shippensburg has been lacking, where we have hired long-term subs at $100 a day for the first 30 days, and then they go to the higher rate. And I know that is something that Shippensburg has not attracted substitutes because of that. So I applaud you for that. The other thing that, again, we are losing aides, and I've spoke about this before. I noticed a couple weeks ago, we hired an aide at $10.15 an hour. I, Teresa Reed, has worked for the district for 5 years. I don't make too much over $10.15 an hour. Again, that's a problem. And I know Mrs. Jones is the same way. We love our jobs at Shippensburg, but we don't feel appreciated. So again, I would like for the school board to think about that. And let me tell you something, our teachers, I work at Nancy Grayson, and I cannot feel more appreciated by the teachers that I work with. Every single day, they tell me how much they appreciate me and how much I do. So it's not that I don't feel appreciated, but sometimes I could put my resignation in tomorrow, and I know that the school board and the administration would say, oh, well, we'll just, put her job up for a new listing. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Teresa. And I do not see any other hands raised. So we'll move on to item number 10, which is the information date saver. The upcoming board meetings. There is only one meeting in November and one meeting in December. The meeting in November is November 9th. The meeting in December is December 7th. We also have a IDEAB annual determination, and that letter is attached. And that is it. Is there a motion to approve adjournment?
Fred Scott, I make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Charlie Suter, second.
Second. Okay, that's it. The board meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for attending.